A man stops to help a woman change her flat tire at the side of the road. A simple act of kindness he's done before, but this time, the consequences are anything but ordinary. The next morning, a black SUV arrives, and its presence hints at a chain of events that will change his life forever. Hi everyone, welcome to Tales Unveiled. Today, I'm excited to share a new story with you. Let's get started. Life for Rick had never been easy. From his childhood to his later years, he had faced more than his fair share of challenges, mentally, emotionally, and even in his marriage. Growing up with toxic and abusive parents, Rick had known nothing but hardship. He was beaten and verbally abused at the slightest provocation. At just 9 years old, he managed to escape from his biological parents. But unfortunately, his foster home wasn't much better. This unstable environment led to a lot of bad decisions during his teenage years. Rick, without parental guidance, became a teenager who made poor choices. Drug addiction soon consumed his life, and for most of his adult years, he struggled to break free from its grip. By the time Rick finally managed to clean himself up, much of his life had already fallen apart. He had lost his marriage, his children, and even a chance to work at the company of his dreams. Despite his efforts to repair his family, Rick eventually accepted that his fate might be to live and die as a lonely old man. However, he had one thing left, a job at a pizza shop on the outskirts of town. While it wasn't glamorous, it paid the bills and gave him just enough to get by. Unlike other men his age, Rick didn't have many friends. His only real friend was his neighbor, Mr. Freeman, who lived just down the street. Whenever Rick felt a bit lonely, he would visit Mr. Freeman and his family. Mr. Freeman was more than just a neighbor. He had been a huge support to Rick. He had helped Rick break free from his drug addiction, and he was also the one who had helped Rick secure his job at the pizza shop. In return for all the love and care Mr. Freeman had shown him, Rick became a loyal friend, occasionally helping out around Mr. Freeman's house with small repairs. But beyond that, Rick's life was quiet. He didn't have visitors. The doorbell rarely rang, and when it did, it was almost always Mr. Freeman. One night, after finishing a late shift at the pizza shop, Rick was driving home in his old truck. The road was quiet, and the streets were empty. That's when he noticed a young woman by the side of the road. She was bent over, her phone pressed between her lips as she struggled with a flat tire. Rick had seen this many times before. People in need, stranded on the side of the road. His first instinct was to drive past and head home, as it was already late, and he had plans to watch his favorite crime show on TV. But as it got closer, he noticed the woman's frustration. She would struggle with the car jack, and there was no sign of anyone else around. Rick didn't think twice. He pulled over behind her car, honked the horn to get her attention, and walked over to offer help. "You got a flat tire?" Rick asked in his usual concerned voice. "Yes." The young woman replied with evident frustration. "The damn tire must have picked up a nail or something." "Okay, let me help you fix that," Rick said, as he bent over to raise the car with the jack. He noticed the young woman seemed hesitant at first. It was late, after all, and people don't often stop to help strangers at this hour. But Rick understood her hesitation, so he decided to start a conversation to put her at ease. "So, where are you coming from?" Rick asked, trying to break the ice. It worked. The woman began talking more comfortably. She told Rick that she had been out with her friends and had been driving home when she realized her tire was flat. As the conversation continued, she relaxed, and they exchanged stories about their lives. The woman didn't share too much about herself, but Rick opened up about his past. He told her about his good friend, Mr. Freeman, and his many regrets. He talked about how much he missed his wife and children, and how much he wished he had made different choices earlier in life. From what Rick shared, the young woman could tell that he was remorseful. She realized that Rick wasn't just an old man. It was clear he had gone through a lot in life, and he wasn't perfect, but he was genuine. As Rick finished changing the tire, he grinned widely, feeling good about the conversation. "I really enjoyed talking to you," he said, his voice warm with a smile. The young woman thanked him profusely for his help, and Rick got back in his truck and drove off. He didn't mind that it was too late to watch his favorite crime show. He felt fulfilled by helping someone in need and having an actual conversation that wasn't with Mr. Freeman or his family. That night, Rick went to bed feeling something he hadn't in a long time. Hope. Little did he know, the next morning, his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. The next morning, Rick woke up early, as he often did. He had his daily workout routine in the yard, followed by laundry and tidying up his small home. It was his day off, and he planned to spend the afternoon alone, relaxing. He would visit Mr. Freeman and his family later in the evening, as he usually did. Despite the loneliness that often surrounded him, Rick had come to appreciate the quiet moments. After all, he had learned to find peace in solitude. By mid-afternoon, Rick was settled in front of the TV, watching a comedy show to pass the time. The laughter on the screen filled the room, and for a moment, Rick felt content. But just as he was starting to lose himself in the show, he heard a soft knock at his front door. At first, he was confused. He wasn't expecting anyone. Mr. Freeman was at work, and Rick couldn't think of anyone else who might drop by. The knock came again, this time a little louder. Rick stood up, his curiosity piqued. He wasn't used to visitors. When he opened the door, he was greeted by a man dressed in an expensive suit. The man had a calm, composed demeanor, and he was flanked by two other men standing near a black SUV parked in Rick's driveway. The sight of the SUV immediately struck Rick as odd. Who would show up at his door in such a way? "You must be Rick," the man in the suit said, his voice polite but direct. "Yes, I am," Rick replied, his confusion growing. "How can I help you?" The man smiled warmly and introduced himself. "I'm Mr. Gerald. I'm here on behalf of my younger sister." With that, Mr. Gerald showed Rick a picture on his phone. The woman in the photo was the same young woman Rick had helped the night before. Rick's eyes widened. "Oh, did she get home safely?" he asked, his concern for the young woman still fresh in his mind. "Yes, she did," Mr. Gerald replied. "And she couldn't stop talking about the kind-hearted stranger who helped her last night. She said you reminded her so much of our late father, especially with the stories you shared. In fact, she insisted that I come and see you today." Rick's confusion turned into a mix of surprise and curiosity. "But how did you find me?" he asked. "Don't you remember?" Mr. Gerald said, with a small smile, "You told Sarah a lot about yourself, your job, where you live, even the street you're on. All we had to do was talk to a few of your neighbors, and they pointed us in the right direction." Rick was still trying to process the situation when Mr. Gerald handed him a white envelope. It was thick and felt important, but Rick was hesitant. He could tell just by the weight of it that it wasn't a simple letter. "I can't accept this," Rick said, trying to push the envelope back to Gerald. "I just helped a stranded woman. It was nothing." "Sarah insists," Mr. Gerald said firmly, pushing the envelope back into Rick's hands. "She wants to thank you properly for your kindness. Please don't say no." Rick hesitated, but the sincerity in Mr. Gerald's eyes left him with no choice. He opened the envelope, unsure of what to expect. Inside, he found a check. The moment he saw the amount written on it, his heart sank. It was an amount far beyond anything he could have ever imagined. It was more than generous. It was life-changing. Rick's hands trembled as he stared at the check. I can't accept this," he muttered, his voice shaky. Tears began to well up in his eyes. He had never been on the receiving end of such kindness before, and it overwhelmed him. But Gerald wouldn't hear it. "Sarah wants you to have it," he said kindly. "She's very grateful for what you did for her. She said it's the least she could do." Without thinking, Rick reached forward and hugged Gerald tightly. "Thank you so much. Words can't express how much this means to me." "Please, thank Sarah for me," Rick said, his voice full of emotion. Gerald smiled and nodded. "Don't worry. Sarah will be here when she gets back. She traveled this morning and will be away for a while, but she'll come to see you as soon as she's back in town." Rick, still in a daze, invited Gerald inside. "Please, let me make you a cup of coffee." "It's the least I can do," Rick said, eager to express his gratitude in any way he could. "Thank you, but you don't have to," Gerald responded, still smiling. There was a brief pause before Gerald added, "One more thing. Sarah told me that it had always been your dream to work at the Golden Leaf Company. Well, I got great news for you." Rick's heart skipped a beat. He had mentioned his dream job at Golden Leaf countless times to Mr. Freeman, but he never imagined anything would come of it. "There's an opening there," Gerald continued, "and it comes with 3 months of training. I've already put in a good word for you. We'll need your resume." Rick couldn't believe what he was hearing. His dream job was within his reach. He burst into tears again, this time in a mixture of shock and joy. "Are you serious?" he choked out. "This is really happening?" Gerald nodded, his smile broadening. "Yes, it's all real, Rick." Rick could hardly process the news. It felt too good to be true. His whole life, he had worked hard but never had the chance to reach his full potential. Now, it seemed like everything was falling into place. For months later, Rick's life had transformed in ways he could hardly believe. The check Sarah had given him had been a game changer. It not only helped him with immediate needs, but also gave him the stability he had longed for. For the first time in many years, Rick felt like he had hope for the future. The job at Golden Leaf was everything he had dreamed of and more. The 3-month training program had been intense, but Rick threw himself into it, learning everything he could. He was surrounded by a new environment, one full of opportunities, smart people, and a genuine sense of respect. His co-workers treated him like a peer, and for the first time in a long time, Rick felt like he was part of something bigger. By the end of his training, Rick was given a permanent position at Golden Leaf. His salary increased, and for the first time, he was able to take control of his financial future. But the biggest surprise of all came when he realized how much his personal life had started to change, too. Rick moved into a new home, something far better than the small, run-down place he had lived in for years. He had enough money now to afford a nicer neighborhood, one where he could be proud to live. But Rick didn't just move on his own. He couldn't imagine leaving Mr. Freeman and his family behind. The Freeman family had become his surrogate family, and he owed them everything. Rick invited Mr. Freeman, his wife, and their kids to join him in the new house. They were hesitant at first, but Rick insisted. "You're the only family I've got," he said to Mr. Freeman. "I couldn't imagine living here without you." Mr. Freeman agreed, and soon they were all settled in Rick's new home. Rick's life, once filled with loneliness and regret, was now surrounded by the warmth of family. Even though it wasn't his biological family, the Freeman family had taken him in when no one else had, and they had been there through thick and thin. They were his true family, and he cherished every moment he spent with them. Meanwhile, Rick's relationship with Sarah and Gerald grew stronger. They kept in touch regularly, and whenever Sarah was in town, they would meet up. Gerald and Sarah treated Rick like a father, always checking in on him and offering support whenever he needed it. One day, Sarah came to visit Rick, bringing along a surprise. "Rick," she said with a smile, "I have something else for you. It's not a check this time, but it's something that I think you'll appreciate." She handed Rick a small envelope. Inside, there was a letter. Rick opened the letter, and as he read it, his eyes widened. The letter was a recommendation for Rick to be considered for an even better position at Golden Leaf, one that would bring him even closer to his goals. This was a promotion that Rick hadn't dared to dream about. The company had recognized his hard work, dedication, and the positive changes he had brought to the team. And now, they wanted to reward him with even more responsibility and leadership. Rick's hands shook as he read the letter. His heart raced, and tears filled his eyes. I don't know what to say," he whispered, his voice full of emotion. "This is more than I ever thought I deserved." Sarah smiled at him warmly. "You've earned it, Rick. You're not just a stranger anymore. You become part of our family, and we'll always have your back." Rick was overwhelmed with gratitude. He hugged Sarah tightly. "Thank you," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "Thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here without you." As Rick moved forward in his career, his life continued to improve. He was no longer the lonely man he had been for so many years. He had built new relationships, found stability, and, most importantly, he had rediscovered his sense of purpose. One evening, as Rick sat on the porch of his new home, he reflected on everything that had happened in the past few months. It was hard to believe that just a short time ago, he had been stuck in a rut, unsure if things would ever get better. Now, he had a new life, a new job, and a renewed sense of hope for the future. His phone rang, breaking his thoughts. It was Mr. Freeman. "Hey, Rick, how's everything going?" Mr. Freeman asked. "Great, actually," Rick replied with a smile. "I can't thank you enough for everything, Mr. Freeman. You and your family have given me more than I could ever repay." "We've got your back, Rick," Mr. Freeman said. "You've always been there for us, and now we're here for you. Don't forget that." Rick hung up the phone and looked out over the quiet street, a peaceful smile spreading across his face. His life had changed so much in such a short time, and he couldn't help but feel blessed. He had faced darkness, made mistakes, and struggled to find his way. But through his kindness to a stranger, everything had turned around. It was true what they say. Kindness often comes back to you in ways you least expect. And for Rick, it had come back in the most incredible way possible. As the months passed, Rick's life seemed to take on a rhythm he had never known before. He woke up every day with a sense of purpose, eager to face whatever challenges lay ahead. His job at Golden Leaf had become more than just a career. It had become a passion. The work he did there fulfilled him in ways he never thought possible, and his colleagues respected him as a valuable member of the team. Rick still couldn't believe how much things had changed since that fateful night when he stopped to help the young woman with the flat tire. The kindness he had shown had set off a chain of events that had altered the course of his life forever. It was as though the universe had responded to his actions, giving him a second chance at happiness. But with this new life came new responsibilities. Rick found himself in a position where he had to constantly remind himself of the lessons he had learned. He couldn't let himself slip back into the old habits and mindsets that had held him back for so many years. There were still moments of doubt, but they were fewer and farther between. He had learned to trust in himself again, and with the support of his friends and family, he was determined to keep moving forward. One day, as Rick was leaving work, he received a call from Sarah. Her voice was excited, and there was an energy in her tone that made Rick immediately curious. "Rick, I got something amazing to tell you," she exclaimed. "What's going on?" Rick asked, a smile tugging at his lips. He was used to Sarah's enthusiasm, but this time it seemed like something big was happening. "I've been in touch with some people at Golden Leaf," Sarah began, "and they've been so impressed with your work that they're offering you a senior position. You'll be leading a new project, and they want you to manage a small team. This is a huge opportunity, Rick." Rick's heart skipped a beat. A senior position? Leading a team? This was the kind of opportunity he had only dreamed of in the past, but now it was being handed to him. He could hardly believe it. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her excitement still evident. "I told them everything I knew about you, and they're convinced you're the right person for the job. It's a big step, Rick, and I know you'll do great." Rick could hardly contain his emotions. I don't know what to say. "Thank you, Sarah. This is incredible. I never imagined that things would turn out this way." "You've earned it, Rick," Sarah said warmly. "You've worked hard and now it's paying off. I couldn't be prouder of you." Rick thanked her again, his voice thick with gratitude. As he hung up the phone, he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just a job or the promotion. It was a journey that had brought him here. He had worked hard to get to this point, and now he was finally being recognized for it. As Rick's career flourished, his personal life continued to thrive as well. He and Mr. Freeman remained as close as ever. They spent their evenings together, reminiscing about the past and celebrating the victories of the present. The Freeman family had become an integral part of Rick's life, and he couldn't imagine living without them. In addition to his newfound professional success, Rick also began to heal emotionally. He still missed his wife and children, but he had come to terms with the fact that they might never be a part of his life again. Instead of dwelling on the pain, Rick focused on the people who were there for him, the friends, the neighbors, and the people who had supported him through thick and thin. One evening, after a long day at work, Rick sat on his porch, watching the sun set behind the trees. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and the air was cool and calming. He closed his eyes for a moment, reflecting on how far he had come. For the first time in a long while, Rick felt at peace. He had made it through the darkness of his past, and now he was living a life filled with light. It was a life he had never expected, but one he had earned through hard work, perseverance, and a simple act of kindness. As Rick looked out over the quiet neighborhood, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything that had brought him to this moment. The kindness he had shown to a stranger had opened doors he never thought possible. And now, he was living a life that was not only fulfilling, but also surrounded by people who cared about him. The future was bright for Rick, and he knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. He had proven to himself that anything was possible as long as he remained true to who he was and continued to show kindness to others. Rick's life continued to unfold in ways he had never imagined possible. The senior position at Golden Leaf was just the beginning. Over the next year, he threw himself into his new role with all the enthusiasm and dedication he had developed over the years. He led his team with compassion and wisdom, always striving to set an example for those around him. People respected Rick not just for his skills, but for the kindness he had shown throughout his life, a kindness that had now come full circle. His team thrived under his leadership, and Rick's reputation within the company continued to grow. He was no longer the quiet, lonely man from the past. He was a respected leader, someone who had earned his place at the table. The company itself recognized his efforts. In just a few years, Rick was promoted again, this time to a higher position with even more responsibilities. But despite the new challenges and pressures that came with it, Rick never lost sight of the values that had gotten him to this point. Hard work, kindness, and the belief that anything was possible if you put your heart into it. One evening, as Rick was preparing to head home after another successful day at work, he received a call from Sarah. Her voice, always full of energy, brought a smile to Rick's face. "Rick," Sarah exclaimed, "I have something incredible to share with you." "What's going on?" Rick asked, his curiosity piqued. He had learned to expect good news from Sarah, but this time, there was something in her tone that made him even more eager. "It's about the Golden Leaf Company," Sarah began. "They want to send you to a conference in Europe. It's a huge opportunity, an international event where you'll be able to network with industry leaders, and it could open up even more doors for you." Rick's heart skipped a beat. "Europe? This is unbelievable. I never imagined something like this would come my way." "You deserve it," Sarah said, her voice warm and reassuring. "You've worked harder than anyone I know, Rick. This is just another step in your incredible journey." Rick was speechless for a moment. It felt surreal to think that just a few years ago, he had been struggling, lost in a world of regret. Now, he was being offered opportunities that seemed like dreams come true. After the call, Rick sat in his office for a moment, staring out the window at the bustling city below. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the skyline. He thought about his journey, the struggles, the mistakes, the heartbreak, and the unexpected moment of kindness that had changed everything. He thought about the young woman he had helped with a flat tire, the moment that had set everything in motion. If he hadn't stopped that night, his life would have taken a very different path. But instead of dwelling on the past, Rick focused on the present and the future. The possibilities seemed endless, and he felt more alive than ever before. He had not only transformed his own life, but had become a beacon of hope for others. He had gone from a man with nothing to a man who had everything. A fulfilling career, a loving surrogate family, and a sense of peace he had never thought possible. As Rick left the office that evening, he made his way to Mr. Freeman's house, as he often did. The Freeman family had become his anchor, and they celebrated every success with him. When Rick walked through their door, he was greeted with smiles and laughter, as usual. "I've got some big news," Rick said, grinning from ear to ear. "What is it?" Mr. Freeman asked, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. Rick shared the news about the European conference, and the Freeman family erupted in cheers. They were just as excited for him as he was for himself. "You've earned it, Rick," Mr. Freeman said, his voice full of pride. "You've come so far. We're all so proud of you." That night, as Rick sat with his adopted family, enjoying dinner and sharing stories, he reflected on everything he had achieved. It wasn't just about the promotions or the opportunities that had come his way. It was about the connections he had built, the love he had found, and the person he had become. Rick had learned that true success wasn't just about material wealth or status. It was about living with integrity, kindness, and a sense of purpose. Looking back at his life, Rick realized how far he had come. He had been through darkness, but it had led him to the light. He had been lost, but now he was found, surrounded by love, respect, and a future full of possibilities. The chain of events that had started with a simple act of kindness had completely transformed Rick's life, and he had no intention of taking it for granted. Every day, he woke up with gratitude in his heart, ready to face whatever came next. He knew that life would continue to throw challenges his way, but he was no longer afraid. With the support of his friends and the lessons he had learned, Rick was ready to take on anything. And so, Rick's story continues. One of redemption, of finding hope in the darkest of times, and of discovering that the smallest act of kindness can change everything. Thank you for following along with Rick's journey. If you loved this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales like this one. And while you're at it, check out the video currently on your screen. See you next time.